Diana sat at the dining room table, staring at the pile of papers her stepmother, Margaret, had placed in front of her. The room was too quiet, save for the ticking of the antique clock on the wall, a relic of her late father's love for collecting unique timepieces. The inheritance meeting was supposed to be straightforward, or so Diana had thought. Her father's will had been clear. Everything would be split evenly between her and Claire, her stepsister, but Claire had a way of complicating even the simplest of matters. "Diana," Claire began, her voice sharp and accusatory, "before we go any further, there's something we need to address." Diana looked up, confused by the tone. Claire had barely spoken to her in weeks, not since their father's funeral. Now her stepsister sat rigid, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the table as if she were preparing to deliver some great revelation. "What are you talking about?" Diana asked cautiously. Claire leaned forward, her face set in an expression that Diana had come to recognize over the years, a mix of smugness and false innocence. "It's about Dad's watch, the Patek Philippe." Diana frowned. "What about it?" "It's missing," Claire said bluntly, "and I know where it is." The weight of the accusation didn't hit Diana at first. She blinked, trying to process what Claire was implying. "What do you mean, it's missing?" "It was in the safe. We both saw it there when the lawyer read the will." "That's the thing," Claire said, her voice growing colder. "It's not in the safe anymore, and Margaret and I found it. In your room." Diana's stomach dropped. "What?" Margaret, who had been silent up to this point, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "It's true, Diana. Claire found the watch in your dresser drawer yesterday. I thought it couldn't be true, but it was there," Claire interrupted, "hidden under a pile of your clothes." Diana's heart raced as she struggled to find her voice. "That's impossible. I haven't touched that watch. Why would I even—" "Don't play innocent," Claire snapped, her calm facade slipping. "You knew how much that watch was worth. It's one of Dad's most valuable possessions, and you wanted it for yourself." Diana felt a rush of heat rise to her face. The accusation was absurd, but the conviction in Claire's voice made it clear she had planned this carefully. "You're accusing me of stealing? For my own inheritance?" "It's not your inheritance until it's officially divided," Claire said smoothly, leaning back in her chair. "And stealing from the estate is illegal. Frankly, I'm shocked you would stoop so low." Diana turned to Margaret, searching for some sign of support. "Margaret, you've known me for years. You really think I'd do something like this?" Margaret hesitated, her eyes darting between Diana and Claire. "I don't know what to think, Diana. The watch was found in your room. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, but it doesn't look good." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Claire cut in. "Diana's always been jealous of me. She couldn't stand the idea of us splitting everything evenly, so she decided to take what she thought she deserved." "That's not true." Diana's voice cracked with frustration. "I've never been jealous of you, Claire. You're the one who's always tried to make me feel like an outsider in this family." Claire smirked. "Maybe you feel like an outsider because you act like one. You've never appreciated what Dad did for you, and now you've shown your true colors." Diana's hands clenched into fists under the table. She wanted to scream, to throw Claire's accusations back in her face, but she knew it would only make her look guilty. "This is ridiculous," she said through gritted teeth. "If the watch was in my room, someone put it there. I didn't steal anything." Margaret sighed heavily, rubbing her temples. "This isn't the time for shouting matches. We need to figure out what to do next." Claire's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "It's simple. Diana needs to be held accountable. We should report this to the executor of the estate and have her removed from the inheritance process until this is resolved." "You can't be serious," Diana said, her voice shaking. "You want to cut me out of my father's will over a lie?" "It's not a lie," Claire shot back. "And if you're innocent, you'll have no problem proving it. But until then, you shouldn't have access to anything that belongs to the estate." Diana looked at Margaret again, desperate for her stepmother to see reason. You're really going to let her do this? You're going to let her ruin my life over something I didn't do?" Margaret hesitated, her expression torn. "Diana, if you didn't take the watch, we'll figure it out. But we can't just ignore what's happened. I think it's best if we pause the inheritance process for now, at least until we get some clarity." Diana felt like the ground had been pulled out from under her. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You're making a mistake, both of you. And when I prove that Claire's lying, you're going to regret this." Claire's smile widened. "Good luck with that." Diana stormed out of the room, her mind racing. She didn't know how Claire had pulled this off, but one thing was clear. Her stepsister was trying to sabotage her, and Diana wasn't going to let her get away with it. As she paced her bedroom later that night, Diana replayed the conversation in her mind, searching for answers. Why had Claire chosen the watch? How had she managed to plant it in Diana's drawer without anyone noticing? And most importantly, how could Diana prove her innocence? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Margaret, looking uneasy. "I just wanted to say," Margaret began, "that I hope you understand this isn't personal. I just want to do what's right for everyone." Diana stared at her, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "What's right? You think accusing me of stealing is what's right?" Margaret sighed. "I don't know what to believe, Diana, but if you didn't take the watch, I hope you can prove it." Diana didn't respond. She watched as Margaret left the room, closing the door behind her. For the first time, she felt completely alone in her father's house. But she wasn't giving up. Claire might have won the first round, but Diana was determined to fight back. She would uncover the truth, no matter what it took. Diana couldn't sleep that night. The accusations, the smug expression on Claire's face, and Margaret's passive agreement churned in her mind, feeding a growing sense of betrayal. The house, once her sanctuary, now felt suffocating, like every corner hid another attack waiting to happen. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment Claire accused her over and over. The watch. The prized Patek Philippe her father had cherished for years. It had been more than a piece of jewelry. It symbolized his hard work, his success, and the legacy he wanted to leave behind. And now, Claire had turned it into a weapon. Diana knew it wasn't enough to sit back and hope the truth would reveal itself. By dawn, Diana had a plan. She would start by gathering information. Claire might have been crafty enough to frame her, but no lie was perfect. There had to be something Claire missed, some detail that would unravel her scheme. Her first move was simple. She needed to see the house's security footage. Her father, always cautious, had installed cameras throughout the property years ago. Diana wasn't sure if they were still operational, but if they were, they could hold the key to proving her innocence. Diana waited until Margaret left for her usual mid-morning errands. Once she was sure the house was empty, she made her way to her father's old study. The room still smelled faintly of his cologne, a mix of cedarwood and spice, and the familiarity gave her a brief pang of longing. Shaking it off, she approached the small cabinet where her father had kept the security system's monitor. The cabinet was locked, of course, but Diana knew her father's habits. After a few minutes of searching, she found the key tucked inside one of the drawers in his desk. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the cabinet, half expecting to find it empty. To her relief, the monitor was still there, along with a stack of hard drives labeled by date. Diana powered on the system, her heart racing. The cameras were still recording. She quickly began scrolling through the footage from the past week, focusing on the days leading up to Claire's accusation. Hours passed as Diana sifted through the videos, her eyes straining from staring at the screen. She watched herself move through the house, Margaret bustling in the kitchen, and Claire flitting about with her usual air of self-importance. Nothing seemed unusual, until she reached the footage from 2 days before the accusation. There it was. Claire. She was entering Diana's room, a small object clutched in her hand. Diana leaned closer to the screen, her pulse quickening. The angle wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough to see Claire opening Diana's dresser drawer and slipping something inside. She stayed only a few seconds before leaving the room, glancing over her shoulder as if to make sure no one was watching. She saw Diana's hands clenched into fists. She knew it. Claire had planted the watch. But she needed more. This footage was a start, but it wasn't definitive proof. Claire could argue she was looking for something or claim it wasn't the watch she had placed in the drawer. Diana needed to connect the dots. Her next step was to dig into Claire's motives. She already knew Claire resented her, but resentment alone didn't explain the lengths Claire was willing to go to cut her out of the inheritance. There had to be something else driving her. Diana decided to pay a visit to Camilla, a family friend who had been close to their father. Camilla had known both Diana and Claire for years, and if anyone had insight into Claire's behavior, it was her. Camilla lived a few miles away in a quaint, ivy-covered house that felt worlds away from the tension of Diana's home. When Camilla opened the door, her face lit up with surprise. "Diana, it's been so long. How are you holding up?" Diana forced a smile. "I've been better. Do you have a few minutes? I could really use someone to talk to." Camilla ushered her inside, offering her a cup of tea before they settled into the cozy living room. "So," Camilla began, her tone gentle, "what's going on?" Diana hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. Finally, she decided to lay it all out. She explained Claire's accusation, the missing watch, and the footage she had found. Camilla listened intently, her expression growing more serious with every detail. "That's troubling," Camilla said when Diana finished. "I always knew Claire could be competitive, but this is something else entirely." "Was she always like this?" Diana asked. Camilla sighed. "In a way, yes. Claire always felt like she had something to prove. She was so determined to be the center of attention, to be seen as the better daughter. I think she was afraid of being overshadowed." Diana frowned. "Overshadowed by what? I've never tried to compete with her." "I know," Camilla said with a sad smile, "but Claire saw your relationship with your father as a threat. He was so proud of you, Diana. He admired your independence, your determination. Claire, on the other hand, she relied on him. She needed his approval in a way you didn't." Diana absorbed this, feeling a pang of sadness. She had always sensed Claire's insecurity, but she hadn't realized how deeply it ran. "Do you think she's doing this to get back at me?" Diana asked. Camilla hesitated. "It's possible, but there's something else you should know. A few weeks before your father passed, Claire came to me asking for a loan." Diana's eyes widened. "A loan? For what?" "She wouldn't say," Camilla admitted. "She seemed desperate, though. When I told her I couldn't help, she got defensive and stormed out. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now, I wonder if she was in some kind of trouble." Diana's mind raced. If Claire had financial problems, it would explain why she was so determined to secure the inheritance for herself. "Do you think she could be in debt?" Diana asked. "It's possible," Camilla said. "I wish I could tell you more, but that's all I know." Diana thanked Camilla for her time and left with a renewed sense of determination. She needed to find out more about Claire's finances. If Claire was in debt, it could provide the motive Diana needed to expose her scheme. Back at home, Diana began searching for clues. She sifted through old documents, receipts, and anything else she could find that might shed light on Claire's situation. Hours passed without any breakthroughs, but Diana refused to give up. Finally, tucked away in a drawer in the study, she found what she was looking for: a crumpled piece of paper with the name of a loan company and an overdue payment notice. The amount owed was staggering, far more than Claire could hope to pay off without the inheritance. Diana stared at the paper, her hands trembling. This was it, Claire's motive. She took a deep breath, her mind racing with the possibilities. She had the footage, the evidence of Claire's financial troubles, and a growing sense of clarity. Claire's carefully constructed lie was beginning to unravel. But Diana knew the fight wasn't over. If she wanted to expose Claire, she would have to be strategic. One wrong move could give Claire the chance to twist the narrative in her favor. Diana wasn't just fighting for her inheritance anymore, she was fighting for the truth. Diana sat at her desk, staring at the growing pile of evidence she'd collected over the past few days. The security footage showing Claire planting the watch, the overdue payment notice from the loan company, notes from her conversation with Camilla. Piece by piece, the puzzle was coming together, and Diana could finally see the full picture. Claire was desperate, in debt, and willing to do whatever it took to secure the inheritance for herself. But knowing the truth wasn't enough. Diana needed to present her findings in a way that left no room for Claire to wiggle out of it. Claire was a master manipulator, and if given the chance, she would twist the narrative to make herself look like the victim. Diana had to be careful, methodical, and above all, prepared for any backlash. Her first step was to confirm the extent of Claire's financial troubles. The overdue payment notice had been a crucial clue, but Diana needed more concrete proof. She decided to reach out to the loan company directly, posing as Claire. It wasn't something she did lightly. Pretending to be her stepsister made her uneasy, but she was determined to protect her father's legacy. With her heart pounding, Diana picked up the phone and dialed the number on the notice. After a few rings, a cheerful voice answered. "Thank you for calling Capital Choice Lending. How can I assist you today?" Diana took a deep breath. "Hi, this is Claire Anderson. I'm calling about my account. I received an overdue payment notice and wanted to check the balance." "Of course, Miss Anderson," the representative said. "Can you confirm your account number or the last 4 digits of your Social Security number?" Diana rattled off the numbers from the notice, her hands shaking. She was terrified the representative would catch on, but they simply hummed in acknowledgement and began typing. "Thank you. Let me pull up your account. Okay, I see here that your balance is $47,562.38. You've missed 3 payments and the account is currently in collections. Would you like to make a payment today?" Diana's stomach churned. $47,000? That was far worse than she'd imagined. She forced herself to stay calm. "No, not today. I just wanted to check the balance. Thank you for your help." After hanging up, Diana sat in stunned silence. Claire was drowning in debt, and the inheritance was her only lifeline. It was clear now why she had framed Diana. She needed to ensure she got the full amount, and cutting Diana out was the easiest way to do it. The next step was harder, confronting Claire directly. Diana knew she couldn't let her stepsister see the evidence before she was ready to reveal everything to the family, but she also couldn't let Claire think she had won. She needed to rattle her, to plant seeds of doubt that would throw her off balance. Diana waited until Claire was alone in the living room, scrolling through her phone with a self-satisfied smirk. "Claire," Diana said, stepping into the room. Claire glanced up, her smile fading. "What do you want?" Diana crossed her arms, keeping her expression calm. "I know what you did." Claire raised an eyebrow. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Sure you don't," Diana said, her voice steady. "But just so you know, I've been doing some digging, and I've found a few interesting things, like the fact that you're nearly $50,000 in debt, or that you were caught on camera sneaking into my room the day before the watch went—" Claire's face went pale, but she quickly recovered, plastering on a smirk. "You're grasping at straws, Diana. None of that proves anything." "Maybe not yet," Diana said, stepping closer. "But it will. I'm not going to let you steal from me or from Dad's estate. You've lied and manipulated everyone in this house, but your little game is over." For a moment, Claire's mask slipped, and Diana saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. But then she laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "Good luck proving any of that," Claire said. "You don't have any real evidence, and even if you did, who do you think Margaret will believe? Me? Or the outsider who's been nothing but a burden since the day she moved in? Diana's chest tightened at the cruel words, but she refused to let Claire see her falter. "We'll see," she said simply, turning on her heel and leaving the room. The next morning, Diana called for a family meeting. She knew the confrontation would be messy, but it was the only way to expose Claire's lies once and for all. Margaret was the first to arrive, her expression wary. "Diana, what's this about?" "You'll see," Diana said. "Just wait for Claire." When Claire finally sauntered in, looking smug as ever, Diana took a deep breath and began. "I called this meeting because I have something important to share," she said, her voice steady. "It's about the watch and the accusations Claire made against me." Margaret frowned. "Diana, we've already—" "Please, just listen," Diana interrupted. She turned to the TV, where she had queued up the security footage from her father's study. "I found something on the security cameras that I think you both need to see." With a click of the remote, the footage began to play. The room fell silent as the video showed Claire entering Diana's room, the watch in her hand. Margaret's eyes widened, and Claire's smug expression vanished. "Claire," Margaret said, her voice trembling, "what is this?" Claire stammered, her face pale. I was looking for something else." "That doesn't prove anything." "It proves plenty," Diana said, pulling out the overdue payment notice she had found. "It proves that you're drowning in debt and trying to use the inheritance to bail yourself out. You framed me to make sure you'd get the full amount." Margaret stared at the paper in shock, then turned to Claire. "Is this true? Are you in debt?" Claire's eyes filled with tears, but Diana recognized them for what they were, a last-ditch effort to gain sympathy. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Claire said, her voice breaking. I didn't know what else to do. I'm sorry, okay?" Margaret looked devastated. "You lied to me. You accused Diana of stealing, and all this time it was you?" "I didn't have a choice," Claire cried. "I needed the money. You don't understand how hard it's been for me." "No," Margaret said firmly, her voice cold. "What I don't understand is how you could betray your own family like this." Diana watched as the realization dawned on Margaret's face, the weight of Claire's lies sinking in. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of vindication. Claire tried to plead her case, but Margaret silenced her with a glare. "Enough, Claire. We'll deal with the inheritance through the lawyer, but for now, I think you should leave." Claire looked stunned. "You're kicking me out?" Margaret nodded. "You need to take responsibility for your actions, and Diana deserves an apology." Diana didn't say anything as Claire stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. She felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that the truth was finally out, but sadness that it had come at such a high cost. Margaret turned to her, her expression softening. "Diana, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you." Diana nodded, her voice steady. "I just wanted the truth to come out." And now it had. The house felt unnervingly quiet after Claire's departure. It had been a week since the explosive family meeting where everything came to light. Diana thought she'd feel relieved, even triumphant, after exposing the truth, but instead, there was a lingering weight in the air. Claire's betrayal, the shattered trust, and the fractured family ties were wounds that wouldn't heal easily. Margaret had barely spoken since that day, retreating into her room and emerging only for meals. Diana could see the guilt written all over her stepmother's face, the weight of believing Claire's lies and turning against Diana. Margaret wasn't the type to apologize easily, but Diana wasn't sure an apology would fix things anyway. Diana, meanwhile, had thrown herself into work and organizing her father's estate, trying to keep her mind occupied. Yet, even as she focused on logistics and paperwork, she couldn't escape the sense of loss that loomed over her. Her father's absence had never felt more profound. It wasn't just his death that haunted her, but the realization that the family he had worked so hard to build was crumbling under the weight of greed and resentment. One evening, as Diana sorted through another stack of documents in her father's study, Margaret appeared in the doorway. She looked hesitant, almost vulnerable, a far cry from her usual composed demeanor. "Diana," she began, her voice soft. Diana looked up, startled. "Margaret, is everything okay?" Margaret stepped inside, wringing her hands. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice trembling, "for everything." Diana set down the papers, unsure of how to respond. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," Margaret interrupted. She took a deep breath as if steeling herself. "I failed you, Diana. I failed your father. He trusted me to take care of this family, and instead I let Claire manipulate me. I let her turn me against you." Diana watched her stepmother closely, searching for any hint of insincerity. But Margaret's eyes were filled with genuine remorse. "I didn't want to believe Claire could do something so cruel," Margaret continued. "I thought I was protecting her, protecting this family. But I see now that I was blind, and in the process I hurt you. I'm so sorry, Diana." The words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. Diana felt a lump rise in her throat. She had spent weeks feeling betrayed, alienated, and unloved, but hearing Margaret acknowledge her mistakes brought a flicker of hope. "I appreciate that, Margaret," Diana said finally. "I know this hasn't been easy for you, but it hasn't been easy for me either. I've felt like an outsider in this family for so long, and Claire's actions just made it worse." Margaret nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I see that now, and I want to make things right. I want us to rebuild this family, if you're willing to try." Diana hesitated. Part of her wanted to accept Margaret's olive branch, to believe that things could be better, but another part of her was wary, afraid of opening herself up to more pain. "I don't know if we can fix everything," Diana said carefully, "but I'm willing to try." Margaret gave her a small, hopeful smile. "Thank you, Diana. That means more to me than you know." In the days that followed, Margaret made a concerted effort to mend their relationship. She invited Diana to join her for meals, asked for her input on decisions about the estate, and even began sharing stories about Diana's father that she had never heard before. Slowly but surely, the tension between them began to ease. Meanwhile, Diana couldn't shake the feeling that she needed closure with Claire. Despite everything Claire had done, she was still family, and the thought of leaving things unresolved didn't sit right with Diana. After some deliberation, Diana decided to reach out. She called Claire one evening, half expecting her stepsister to ignore the call. But to her surprise, Claire answered on the third ring. "What do you want, Diana?" Claire's voice was sharp, defensive. "I think we need to talk," Diana said. "Can we meet somewhere?" There was a long pause before Claire sighed. "Fine. Tomorrow? At the cafe on Willow Street." The next afternoon, Diana arrived at the cafe early, her nerves on edge. She didn't know what to expect from Claire: anger, defiance, or maybe even an attempt to justify her actions. Claire arrived a few minutes late, her expression guarded. She slid into the seat across from Diana without a word, crossing her arms defensively. "Thanks for coming," Diana said cautiously. Claire raised an eyebrow. "Let's skip the pleasantries, Diana. What do you want?" Diana took a deep breath. "I just want to understand. Why did you do it? Why go to such lengths to hurt me?" Claire scoffed, looking away. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me," Diana said. For a moment, Claire was silent, her expression unreadable. Then, to Diana's surprise, her shoulders slumped, and she let out a bitter laugh. "You want to know why? Fine, because I was desperate. Because I've spent my whole life feeling like I was never good enough. Dad always compared me to you, even if he didn't say it outright. You were the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. And me? I was just... there." Diana frowned. "Claire, that's not true. Dad loved you. He loved both of us." "Maybe," Claire said, her voice cracking, "but it didn't feel that way. And when I got into debt, I panicked. I thought if I could just get the inheritance, I could fix everything. I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't think I'd lose everything in the process." Diana's heart ached at the raw pain in Claire's voice. For all her flaws, Claire was still her sister, and it was clear she had been carrying her own burdens. "I'm not excusing what you did," Diana said gently. "But I wish you had come to me instead of trying to sabotage me. We could have figured something out together." Claire looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Diana." "Maybe not," Diana said. "But I'm willing to try, if you are." The conversation marked a turning point. While it would take time to rebuild trust, Diana and Claire began to take small steps toward reconciliation. They agreed to work together to settle their father's estate fairly, and Claire promised to seek help for her financial troubles. As the weeks turned into months, the family began to heal. Diana and Margaret developed a newfound respect for each other, and even Claire started to show signs of growth. It wasn't a perfect ending. There were still scars and moments of tension, but it was a beginning. For Diana, the experience had been a painful reminder of the complexities of family, love, and betrayal. But it had also taught her the power of forgiveness and the importance of fighting for the truth. In the end, the house that had once been a battleground became a place of healing, and while the road ahead was uncertain, Diana felt hopeful for the first time in a long time. Sometimes, she realized, redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about learning from it and choosing to move forward, one step at a time.